there, and welcome back to another review. Today we're going to be having a look at Hellbound, Hellraiser 2, or Hellraiser 2 Hellbound, whichever way you want to say it. Made in 1988. Clive Barker doesn't direct this time. He doesn't return to the director's chair, but however he did executive produce and he did write the story for the first one. I know this movie does have mixed reviews from a lot of people. Some people like it, some people don't. Some people say it's not as good as the first one. Some people think it's better than the first one, and it does have a few plot discrepancies and things that don't make overly too much sense. I will say there are certain moments that you think but that's the whole idea, I think, of sort of the Hellraiser films in general. I don't think they're not meant to I don't think they're meant to always make 100% sense, although the tone is somewhat different from the first film. I mean, the first one not so much like eerie and creepy, like the first one. This one's more like a warped, trippy, gory adventure type film. As I say, it's still got that Hellraiser tone to it, but where the first film is sort of, just eerie and sort of close together, this one is very much like a trippy, like a warped, adventure that you go on. And I believe the film is still enjoyable. I actually quite like Hellraiser 2. So if you do enjoy Hellraiser 2 and you think it's a good part in the Hellraiser franchise, or even if it's your favourite Hellraiser film, be sure to leave something in the comments below. It's definitely worth a look. Andrew Robinson, who plays Larry in the first film, doesn't return this time. However, Ashley Laurence returns as Kirsty and our main protagonist, so we'll be getting into this today. So it starts with the ending of the first film. It just serves as sort of like a recap to just familiarise yourself with what happened previously in the first Hellraiser. Then we cut to this military officer in some barracks who decides to open one of the special boxes that we got familiar with in the first movie, and is snagged by the Cenobites. And we find out that it's him that was turned into Pinhead. So at this point, you didn't know that the Cenobites were actually once human. That's not explained in the first film at all. They drive home the fact that the Cenobites were actually once living people who got snagged into this sort of dimension, this realm. So you learn that this guy got turned into Pinhead. Kirsty is in the mental institution, and the police investigate the house from the previous film and they find bodies and a bloody mattress. And the cop interviewing her, I always felt, looks a lot like a bigger, chunkier Michael Shannon. Don't ask me why. I just think he does look a bit like you might look at him and think he looks nothing like Michael Shannon, but to me he does look a little tiny bit like Michael Shannon, if not just a bigger Michael Shannon. So then we meet Dr. Chenard, who is like a surgeon using a food blender on someone's brain. What an introduction that is. He's just basically this food mixer blender type thing in somebody's brain. That's what he does with his job. So that's quite an introduction there. We find out Kirsty's boyfriend has just took off and left the institute. So at the end of the first film, she's with this other guy. He's sort of just taken off. He doesn't hang around to make sure he's all right. It probably has nothing to do with him being unavailable for the second movie or not wanting to do it. But yeah, the story is this guy just took off. He doesn't want nothing. He's like, well, I'm free. I'm out. I won't wait for her. I'll go home. So he's just taken off. Some boyfriend he is. Kirsty wants this mattress destroyed that they find at the house, as that's what Julia from the first movie died on, the one who was sort of bringing Frank all the bodies. So then we meet this young girl called Tiffany, who's sort of in the institute, who doesn't speak, she doesn't have a family, and just solves puzzles. So at this point you're thinking, she's probably going to come up at some point in the plot. She's probably going to be relevant at some point in the story. There's no reason why they would introduce a girl that's got no background, but she can solve puzzles. She's probably going to at some point be significant to what's going on, and she is. So you just know, let's say, she's going to be relevant. Kirsty sees what she thinks is her father writing on the wall, "I'm in hell, help me." She sees this body and she thinks it's her dad on the wall in her room, but it turns out to actually be Frank, but she thinks it's her father. Doctor's assistant Kyle overhears the doctor on the phone that the doctor wants the mattress, he wants it delivered to his house, who is actually Gorman from Aliens, by the way, just as a little just a little bit of film trivia for you there. Then we get some flashbacks of the first film, which basically recaps the whole lot of the movie in like a minute. Like they recap the whole first film in like 1 minute. Kirsty sort of explaining sort of what happened. Just goes through the film so quickly. Just the quickest recap I've ever seen. But I don't actually think they miss anything out. They just managed to squeeze it all in. So Kyle, like I said, the doctor's assistant, he sneaks into his house and he sees this mattress on the floor, and the doctor with like a mentally ill patient who thinks he has like these maggots and like these crawly stuff all over his arm, and like he's lured him into his like, sort of his house. So he gives him like this knife so he can sort of cut them off, like get rid of them, not realising, because obviously he is mentally disturbed, that he is in fact cutting himself. The mattress is on the floor. He bleeds onto the mattress. I mean, it's quite a disturbing scene, you know, that this guy is taking advantage of somebody who does have mental issues, that isn't, you know, functioning well, is seeing things, is obviously not in the right frame of mind. And this guy is so, you know, not evil that he just gives him this knife to sort of help cut himself and just so he can bleed. It's quite a disturbing, scary scene that happens there. So then arms and legs reach up from the mattress, and it's Julia in sort of grabs this guy, and it's Julia in tissue and muscle form. And I must say, I love the suits they used for this looks, by the way. I love, like I've mentioned before, I absolutely love practical effects. Always prefer practical effects over CGI. I just love something that's tangible, that is real, that is there in the scene, and it's not just people acting in front of the green screen. I mean, this is why so much times I will be reviewing old movies or films I grew up with, or films that mean a lot to me, or classic movies, because I just think, you know, sometimes, well, all the time, practical effects always usually trump CGI to me. So it's quite a disturbing. She's sort of like gathering this guy, and she's like tissue form. I love the suits they wear. Like whatever she touches, she gets blood on. What happens is she like places her hand into the back of this guy's skull and starts eating him, this patient that the doctor's brought in. You really didn't see so much of that in the first film, well, like necessarily what Frank did. You sort of, Julia brings him the bodies, but you never actually see what actually happens, where you know Frank sort of takes their skin and things like that, but here you sort of see full on like Julia just eating this guy, putting her hand in the back of his skull. And it's like I say, it's quite a scary scene that does stick in your head a little bit. But here is, like I say, it's very clear what they do with the bodies that get brought to them. So at this point, I'm guessing it's when sort of blood meets blood, which brings people back from the Cenobites, right? I mean, I may be wrong, but that's how I sort of interpret it. As I say, there are a few plot little things here that don't make overly that much sense, and maybe sort of all you Hellraiser aficionados and not like people that are more knowledgeable in the franchise than me can explain it. But that's the way I'm seeing it, sort of when blood meets the blood of that, which brings people back. I mean, he's brought her back and he's given her life again, and she gets blood all over his apartment, all over his luxury apartment. I mean, he even gives, like, because she's walking around and she's just like muscle and tissue and things like that, he's like, he needs to give her something to wear, right? He needs to, so she's not bleeding and dripping on everything. So he, for some, out of all the suits to give her, he gives her a white suit. I mean, why a white suit? You know, like, surely that's, you know, it's just going to make, it's not going to make much, it's like, it's going to show up, you know. Gives her a white. I mean, why white? Wraps her in bandages, and of course they have like a snog, they have like a kiss. So Kyle now believes Kirsty and he's on her side now, and we even get the line where Kirsty says to him, Kyle, you don't have to do this. And he goes, I know. You get that, or that classic, that cheesy line that has been said in so many movies. She thinks she has to get her father back, like I say, and wants the box. Kind of reversed this time, and that it's like sort of a male supplying bodies and victims to a female, which isn't important, but what they've done is they've mixed it up, so it's Julia that has sort of taken the Frank role. She's the one who needs bodies so she can sort of live again. So they sneak into his house to get, like, Kirsty and Carl sneak into his house to get the box. Julia has returned to sort of like full form. William Hope as Carl here does a bit of some hammy acting, and when he meets Julia, he doesn't even really ask who she is. He doesn't, like, she's just in the house, and they just start talking for a little bit. Like, he's not really worried or questions sort of who Julia is. He sort of has no idea. Sort of they're in the, like I say, the doctor's house, And yeah, he just starts talking. He's not freaked out. I say some bit of hammy, cheesy acting here going on. He doesn't ask her. So of course she kills him with the old classic hands in the back of the skull thing. That's sort of her signature move in this. That's sort of what she does. Just gets them into people's skulls so easily, as you do. Some dialogue is pretty bad in this film. For example, there's one of the lines of dialogue that just makes me, it just does make me cringe. When she says to Kirsty, where she says, "Take your best shot, Snow White," and it's just, just that whole line of the wicked stepmother and things like that is a bit, it is a bit sort of, did you really have to say that? So Doctor brings in Tiffany, the young girl, to solve these boxes, because the Doctor's got like a collection of them. See, I told you she'd be relevant. I just knew she was going to be relevant, because it's like, I've got this girl in the institute, she can solve loads of puzzles. Well, I've got loads of puzzle boxes. That's an idea. If I get her to solve them, because he's basically curious. He wants to open up the dimension. He's really curious about the other side, and he's just, like I say, he wants to know the knowledge of what is going on. What gets me is, like, in the first film, the box was solved so easily. There was never any explanation that the boxes were hard to solve. In this film, however, for some reason they make out that the boxes are really cryptic to solve. Like, you have to get somebody who's like a specialist in like Rubik's cubes and God knows what else to solve them. But in the first film, the box they have is opened so easily. As I say, he wants to know about the other dimension and reality and the truth, or something like that, whatever it may be. He's just curious. He's a curious little guy. So she solves it. Cenobites come, and Kirsty follows them down this passage that is opened. So, like, when the Cenobites say to Kirsty, there's always an excuse, isn't there? We keep meeting. Like, you keep saying you didn't call us and things like that. You didn't, first you didn't know what it was. Now you say someone else has opened it. And they basically just say to her, well, go and amuse yourself, we're not worried. They're like, let her go and have fun. So the visuals in this film are great. I think visually this film is a lot better. I think visually this film will stick with you. It's just some of the dialogue that doesn't. It's just a few little moments, and like I say, a few little plot points where it is a bit, They expand on the film with what you see, the labyrinth and the god of flesh and desire, known as the Leviathan, which is what Julia is serving and what she gives the Doctor to, as it wants like souls. Kirsty sees door to father's house and says to Tiffany, "If I'm not out soon, I want you to get out." I mean, how soon? She goes, "If I'm not out soon, I want you to go." Well, how soon? Tell Tiffany how long. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half hour. I mean, how long should I wait here? We've nearly almost slipped into, another dimension, another realm. How long do you want me to hang around for? She just says, "If I'm not back soon, you take off." So 10 minutes, 20 minutes. Set design is great in this movie. As mentioned, Frank is the one luring her in, not her father. Julia comes in and rips out Frank's heart. So Julia actually does get payback, and there's pathos, like she does get revenge for what Frank did to her. So there is that element, which is good. Like Julia finally overcomes this power that Frank has over her. She managed to get over that at last. She rips out Frank's heart. I will say I really enjoy Ashley in this, and I think she does a fine job as Kirsty. So the Doctor emerges after being sacrificed to the god and becomes like a Cenobite and has like a large food mixer land on his head. It's all good fun stuff. You've even got it sort of on the cover there. I don't know if you can see that, but yeah, it's all good fun. Tiffany pulls Julia's skin off at one point, and back in the real world, or so we believe, the Doctor bursts in and starts butchering some patients. I will say the Cenobites in this don't seem as menacing as the first film. I don't think they really, now as you learn at the start, they sort of once were humans, and you don't really get a sense of. I mean, Julia in many ways is sort of the main sort of villain in this movie, and sort of the Doctor guy. But the Cenobites themselves, who were sort of the antagonists in the first film, they're not really as threatening as what they were in the first movie. Because where you learn, like I say, they were once human, that initial sort of threat, like who are they, where did they come from, that sort of doesn't sort of seem as urgent now. It doesn't seem sort of like as much of a big deal. Like they're not as scary. Let's say Pinhead gets shown a picture of his real form. They find out all of them were once human form, so the Doctor storms in and kills them, so they turn to human form. Again, just kills them so easily. So Pinhead gets his throat cut, and sliced by him. I mean, if they're all Cenobites, why is he killing them? You know, this is what if they're all Cenobites and the Doctor's been turned into one too, is it because he's serving a different god, or is he a different part of the realm, like dimension, from what they're from? Because he was once human too, he's been turned into one. Or to, like I say, are they from a different dimension? I have no idea. So suddenly Tiffany can speak and has to go back to finish the puzzle. Led to believe the Doctor killed her mum and took her. I mean, some good stop motion stuff here too, by the way, on the Doctor. So Tiffany solves the puzzle. Doctor's head comes off, and Julia saves Tiffany from falling, even though it's Kirsty in Julia's skin. I say there's a lot sort of that happens in that last sort of 15-20 minutes. So the Leviathan explodes and shoots beams down the hallways from whence they came. So you may be asking after all that, like, why do I like this movie? What is there about this movie that makes it so enjoyable? Because the last hour or so, it makes no sense really whatsoever, but it is awesome. I think, to me, there are bits of it that do make sense, but there's a lot of it that doesn't. And like I said at the start of the review, it's very much just a trip, this film. It is very much, like I say, the imagery and the visuals and what happens. It is very much like a trippy acid sort of adventure type film. Very different from the first one, but still has, like I say, the Cenobites and that idea, the boxes and things like that. But this film, I think if you don't like, I think it's a bit underrated. I know there's probably some of you out there that do enjoy Hellbound, Hellraiser 2. So Tiffany and Kirsty walk off. Then we cut to some like movers at the end of the film. And one of them gets sort of sucked into the mattress. So they sort of think they're at the Doctor's place at the end. They find this mattress, and one of them gets sort of sucked into the mattress. Even though I thought at this point it was sort of established, like I said earlier, that it has to be when blood meets blood. But this guy just randomly gets sucked into the mattress with, I don't think he bleeds at all. I may be wrong, but I can't remember him bleeding. I think he just gets sucked in to the mattress. But even though I thought it was established, you had to have blood meeting the blood of the other person so that they could come back, or I don't know. I'm not claiming to be like a Hellraiser like super fan or anything like that, but I still do enjoy the movies. So yeah, that's my review of Hellraiser 2. I really hope you enjoyed. But if you do like this movie, or if it's say if it's one of your favorites, or how do you think it compares to the first film? Do you think it's worse? Do you think it's better? Do you think it's is there plot points about it that you like? Are there things about it that you don't like? I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. I will eventually get round to Hellraiser 3 and, if possible, getting into all the other post Hellraisers after this one. But hope you enjoyed the review. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.